continuing the tradition of Seaview Hall as the stewards and carrying on the great name and condition. I sell real estate, and in 2005 I was hired by the Ross family to sell the house. Margaret Ross was elderly and the house was in extreme disrepair, but this house is so interesting. We had a ton of offers on it, but they were all falling apart because the house was in such bad condition. So, and the banks would not loan on it, so I said to the Ross family, you're going to have to be the bank if you want to sell it. So after 11 failed attempts to sell it, I bought it. I don't know what I was thinking, but I bought it. No, what I was really thinking was preservation. I knew that it was going to be very, very likely that someone would tear it down and build in townhouses like everything else that was happening here. I'm a 5th generation West Seattleite. My family houses, 2 of them have been torn down, and I wanted to be part of something to keep something from changing as a nod to the past. So that's really the motivation behind it. I really didn't know what I was doing. So jumped right in. One of the things we did first of all was to take care of the exterior, the logs. There was quite a few of them that were in poor condition. The house is covered in creosote, which is how they tried to preserve wood at the time. So we hired an expert to come in and sandblast it with corn cob kernels. That's how they took off, that's the method used. And there was no chinking left on the house. So that was a big endeavor. We had to replace about 20 logs. And we had to scour the country for some of those. We found them in telephone pole companies. That's how we found them. There was no railing upstairs. That had to be brought up to code. The next thing we did was tear down some of the walls that were here. And in the middle of this floor right here was a giant buckle of a concrete slab because the weight of the logs had shifted in the sandy soil over time and lurched forward in that corner, causing this corner to come off the ground. There was a gap about this big in the back of the house, like a teeter-totter. I didn't know what that meant. What it meant was the house was tipping over. And the weight had caused the whole, so we knew we had to replace the foundation. That was job number 1 once we got the sandblasting done. And there was a wall that came all the way across here, the whole wall all the way there. Took it down with the original kitchen chimney. And once that happened, the whole house continued to fall even further because that chimney was holding up what was left of the vertical. And that was kind of an emergency. And so what we did was we pulled in I-beams on the 3rd floor of the building with suspension rods, cables with toggles, buried them in the back of the house. We had to remove all the windows, which were going to crack anyway because of all the shifting. And we kept the house from tipping forward and pulled it back slowly but surely to shore it up. Once we ripped out all the plaster, we realized there was not a single thing connecting any of these logs together. They were like stacked up like pencils, literally. That was a very stressful day. So what we ended up doing is tying them with cross beams and cable ties and plywood and eventually the sheetrock. So these logs are not moving. They're not going anywhere. And once we jacked this out, we realized, though we re-anchored it to the foundation, we lowered the floor by a foot and put in a hydronic radiant heat system that goes throughout the house. What you see above here, these beams, if you go upstairs, you'll see they're thinner when you go upstairs. That's because the floor bounced when you walked on it because it wasn't strong enough. So we shored them up by putting this here. We also ran the electrical conduits through it because it used to be just running along the walls. So the radiators are also along, the pipes are along there. And once we did the flooring, it's still concrete, but a concrete floor in a log house doesn't make sense. So we stained it to look like leather, and that's how we ended up with that. The bedroom configuration upstairs on the next level, the original bedroom in the back we didn't touch, but we did sandblast the ceiling because it was painted. This was painted, we sandblasted that, and just to kind of get back to its original shape. And the bathrooms we had to undertake all new heating, new electrical, new plumbing, new everything. And that gave us an opportunity to put in beautiful bathrooms that are gorgeous still. And in the design, knowing this was not going to be my personal home, but knowing it had been a hotel and a boarding house and single apartments, there was 3 apartments at one time, we decided to make it ensuite as much as possible. And that's where Terry and Glenn have been able to do the same thing. So the tradition continues, which is fabulous. The roof line had to change a little bit because it wasn't connected to the logs correctly. Another uh-oh moment. And that's why you see there's a beam that's been put in there. The dormers were changed a little bit to accommodate that. And if you look in those dormers, they are lined in knotty pine, which is salvage wood that came from the walls. The windows are exact replicas. The downstairs windows are original. Everywhere else, they're exact replicas to match and be for insulation purposes. And then we stained everything and tried to pull it all together, and here it is.
Wow.
Somebody had asked me a question about, the bootlegging. Somebody was asking me about bootleggers. We do know that the Kastner family who owned this house, because it was a hotel, people were coming and going. What a perfect guise to have people picking up booze and dropping it. And this was very wooded at the time. They used to row it off of Blake Island, coming down from Vancouver, and they got caught, and he got sent to federal penitentiary. And when I first bought the house, I met a man, he was probably about 95 at the time. He came down and told me that when he was a young boy, he used to get paid a penny to go hide the bottles in drop zones for people to pick up their bootleg. So pretty interesting. Didn't find out any bottles or any treasures or anything like that, but that was pretty interesting stories. And once I bought the place, people did start coming to say, what are you doing, what's going on, and start telling me more about what they knew about the house, which is really fascinating. I'm sure you probably get that too, right? All the time. So.
I just direct them back to you.
Did people come to help you pay for what you were doing?
No. No, but it's a labor of love, and it's, I am so proud that it's still here. What a legacy, and I just feel it's a contribution to West Seattle community and to history of this wonderful community.
Yeah.